When your startup is dying in San Francisco, where do you go? If you're Notion's founders, you flee to Kyoto, Japan, with barely any money and rebuild from scratch. Here's why that crazy decision saved the company. The first failures. But before we get to Kyoto, you need to understand just how many times Notion almost died. Ivan Zhao and Simon Last launched their first product. Not Notion, something completely different. They spent nearly 2 years building software for other companies to create their own tools. The problem? Nobody cared. Developers didn't want it. Companies didn't need it. So they pivoted. They tried again with a different approach, a simpler product. Still nothing. No traction. No users. No revenue. By 2015, they were out of money. Ivan was sleeping on floors. They had burned through their savings. Most founders would have quit. Got a job at Google. Called it a learning experience. But Ivan had this obsession. He believed productivity software was broken. Everyone was juggling Evernote for notes, Trello for tasks, Google Docs for writing, wikis for knowledge. He thought, what if one tool could do all of this? His co-founder and investors thought he was crazy. Toward the Kyoto decision. With $50 left in the bank and San Francisco rent draining what little they had, Ivan made a radical call. He moved to Kyoto, Japan. Why Kyoto? Because rent was cheap, because he could think clearly, and because Ivan had always been inspired by Japanese craft, the idea of spending years perfecting something until it's beautiful. This wasn't a vacation. This was survival mode. Ivan and his small team lived in a tiny apartment, ate instant ramen, and worked 16-hour days. No fancy office, no ping-pong tables, just code and design. For months, they built in complete obscurity. No one in Silicon Valley was paying attention. No press, no hype. Just a few people in Kyoto obsessing over every pixel, every interaction. They were building Notion from scratch, again. But this time, something was different. They weren't building for investors. They weren't building for press coverage. They were building the tool they desperately wanted to use. The slow burn Notion launched quietly in 2016, and almost nothing happened. A few hundred people signed up. Some liked it. Most were confused. Wait, is this a note app? A database? A wiki? Notion was trying to be everything, and that's a dangerous strategy. Users didn't know what box to put it in. But Ivan noticed something. The people who got it, they really got it. They weren't just using Notion. They were obsessed. They were building entire life operating systems inside it. Personal wikis, project dashboards, content calendars. So, Notion made a bet. Instead of chasing everyone, they'd focus on superfans, still barely making money. The team was tiny. Ivan was still in Kyoto. But they made one of the smartest decisions in startup history. They created a free plan for students and educators. The Student Revolution. College students started using Notion to organize their entire lives. Class notes, research, side projects, job applications, everything in one place. And students talk. They share. They evangelize. Notion spread through universities like wildfire. Reddit communities formed. YouTube tutorials exploded. Students were creating templates and sharing them for free. This wasn't a marketing campaign. This was a movement. Then those students graduated, and they brought Notion to their companies. Junior employees were showing senior managers this tool they loved. Hey, can we use this instead of our clunky internal wiki? Suddenly, Notion wasn't just a student app. It was infiltrating startups, then mid-size companies, then enterprises, all without traditional advertising. No Super Bowl commercials, no billboards, just word of mouth from people who genuinely loved the product. By 2020, Notion had millions of users, and investors who had ignored them for years were suddenly very interested. The explosion. Then the pandemic hit, and everything changed. March 2020. The world goes remote. Suddenly, every company needs better tools for distributed teams. They need wikis, databases, project management, documentation, all in one place. Notion was perfectly positioned. It was like they had been preparing for this moment for 5 years. Usage exploded. Sign-ups went vertical. Companies that had never heard of Notion were suddenly migrating entire teams to the platform. April 2020. Notion raises $50 million at a $2 billion valuation. Another funding round. $10 billion valuation. The same company that had $50 in the bank 5 years earlier was now worth more than Evernote ever was. More than most productivity companies in history. Ivan Zhao, the guy who was sleeping on floors in 2015, was now running a decacorn. Why Notion won? So what's the real lesson here? Why did Notion succeed when so many productivity tools failed? First, they were patient. While other startups were chasing rapid growth and investor metrics, Notion spent years in the wilderness, just making the product better. That patience created something truly differentiated. Second, they built for love, not money. When you're broke in Kyoto eating ramen, you can't afford to build something mediocre. You build something you're obsessed with. That obsession translated into a product people could feel. Third, they let users lead. The student strategy wasn't about getting revenue. It was about finding true believers who would spread the word organically. They understood that bottom-up adoption beats top-down sales every time. Fourth, they solved a real problem. We really were using too many apps. Notion didn't invent a problem. They fixed one we were all living with. But here's what I think is the most important lesson. Notion almost died. Multiple times. They could have quit in 2013, or 2015, or 2017. Most people would have. The difference between failure and a $10 billion success story often isn't talent. It's not even the idea. It's persistence when everyone else would walk away. Ivan Zhao spent years in obscurity, betting everything on a vision most people thought was impossible. No safety net, no plan B. And that's the real Notion story. Not the $10 billion valuation, not the Silicon Valley comeback. It's about what happens when you care more about building something great than building something fast. From $50 in the bank to a productivity revolution. That's Notion's comeback.